people can have a quick look about, or look up what it is that we talk about on YouTube later.
Yeah.
Although something quite cool about Blab is that you can look at all of the stuff that's gone on as well, which I think is awesome. Have you used Blab before?
I've seen it. Yeah, it's hooked into a Slack channel, so we use Slack quite a lot, so it's pretty cool. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, but does Slack video like this?
Ooh, hang on, you've frozen. I don't know if that's you or me.
Slack allow you? Does Slack allow you to do video?
Slack basically integrates everything else. It's like an aggregator. So basically, you integrate Blab into the Slack channel, then you can just, when you're in Slack as your team communication channel, you can just do #Blab, and then you'll open a group of Blab then for all of the people in your team. Same as you can do with Hangouts, things like that, basically.
Okay, well, first of all, I wanted just to cover off the IoT dinner that we're doing at the end of this month.
Yep.
That is on the 25th, hosted by Deloitte over in Farringdon. I believe we think that we're going to be able to stream it using a 360-degree camera and Skype. Is that right? Yeah,
and that's actually not new tech. So Microsoft's round table cameras have been around for donkey's years as part of their video conferencing. This is part of the challenge what we're talking about today. So actual live VR streaming is kind of like the Wild West at the moment. It's very difficult at the moment to do video stitching live. So what we're going to do is basically put a 360 view camera onto a 2D interface. So it'll be Skype in 2D that you'll see to be able to watch the event, but you'll be able to see around the room, and it's kind of voice control. So as people talk, the focused camera shifts to whoever's talking around the table, is what happens.
Oh, that is cool. So all I need to do as the host of the dinner is make sure that only one person's talking at once.
Good luck with that. Yeah, I'd probably to do it when there's when the wine course is out, probably. So.
Okay, that's cool. Well, I've actually had some good news from a company that does 3D food printing as well. We've got a company on Twitter called NuFood, NUFOOD, that have asked. They've seen that I've asked for help on Twitter, and they say, they've asked me, what do we need?
That's it.
So that would be quite cool. And we do have Christopher Huskava, the Michelin-starred chef, coming along to make us our meal.
Nice.
So yeah, it should be a good night, and I can see that a few of us are watching this. Craig's online, C's is online as well. Hey guys, okay, so we'll give Ed a couple more minutes. But where do you think we're getting to with regards to VR in the enterprise at the moment? What are you working on that is? I was pretty surprised, to be honest, that we weren't able to stream the event using some kind of VR equipment. I was surprised at how big the challenge was. And that's an enterprise.
You got to think about where we are. So even with HMD displays, like the Gear VR from Samsung, that's still a beta product. They still haven't launched. There is no consumer head-mounted display yet. So there's two aspects to it. One is there's no mass market real head-mounted displays available that are actually enterprise ready per se. The second flick of that, of course, then is, of course, in a typical business at the CIO level and that kind of thing, where people are dealing with social, mobile, analytics, and cloud, there is no experience of VR. Most people might not even they haven't given it any kind of strategic thought yet about how VR might be potentially disruptive to their enterprise. They're so focused on the normal things that most businesses are sorted on. It's a massive outlier at the moment. What you find is you probably get some early adopters and people who are experimenting at home generally and inside of work. But the technical challenges, if you think about the technical challenges of just actually building a decent head-mounted display, these things didn't even exist 2 years ago. Before Palmer Luckey came along with the kind of consumerized products, because of things like the head tracking sensors and stuff got such a low price point to create the HMDs in the first place, there hasn't been any kind of enterprise VR outside of the big lab stuff. So NASA and JPL have had VR for it. Universities and faculties have been researching VR and immersive environments since the late 60s. But it's never come around full circle where it's a core enterprise function, really. And what you're seeing now is the real challenge and complexity around, if you think about the value chain to get to it, the user need is, I'm the user at the top here. I want to immerse myself in physically be transported to another environment in real time. Well, for that to happen, there's a number of stages from the value chain that you've got to map out to work out where the points are. And if you look at those then in terms of product, from like Genesis to, you know, sort of commoditized product, most of the stuff is still over in the Genesis field at the moment. So you've got to have, you've got to be able to capture 360-degree video. Yeah. There are very few high-end 360-degree cameras out there at the moment. There's lots of custom rigs that have been developed for companies. So there are a few big companies that will do live VR streaming. Yellowbird, Next VR. There's a couple of big ones that'll do that kind of thing. But most of it's homebrewed, where people are daisy chaining together 6 GoPros onto a 3D cluster-mounted rig on a ball and setting that up the camera. And then you can stitch. So once you've got the cameras together, the next problem is you have to then stitch that video together in real time. So you have to basically turn those individual points into. So to do that, you can't do that on a mobile phone. That needs to be, at the moment, a fairly decent powered PC. You need 2 Titan X cards in it. You either need Blackmagic or Magewell video cards inside of those, because you've got to put at least 6 HDMI feeds in from those cameras to process that video and stitch it together. Once you've stitched the video together in real time, then you've got to distribute it up to the end user in a format. Now, that requires a CDN network. So you need a Fastly, or you need, an Akamai, you need or an Adobe. You need a CDN network, a content delivery network, to push the content to the thing. Then you have to decide, what device are you putting it to? Because if you put it to, because if you're doing it to a PC-based Oculus DK2, which is plugged into the PC via the internet, you've got a stable internet connection. Then you need an app that can consume the information from the CDN to put it in, so you can put yourself and immerse it in. We're quite a long way away from being able to do that where you're streaming live to a mobile phone. And that's part of the challenge with this stuff, with this concept is there's a continuum of a journey about, what you can do now and what is potentially going to be available to do in the near future. And we're on this kind of road at the moment. Now, there are lots of experimental things you can do with VR inside the enterprise that have potentially lots of impact on improving business process and value chain, low cost stuff that you can do using the existing tech today. But you really are on a very early stage journey to that kind of ubiquitous plug yourself in VR environment, really.
So just for those people that don't know you, Lewis, can you give a quick description of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so my name's Lewis Richards. I'm a researcher for a company called the Leading Edge Forum. Leading Edge Forum is we research the intersection between business and IT, basically. So we've been researching around kind of like 5 core domains. We're a bit different from like a Forrester or a Gartner or IDC, that kind of thing. We don't do kind of broad market research into products and services. And within that framework, the one domain I'm in charge of, I work in doing the main research on consumerization. So we've been researching consumerization as a topic for about 10 or 11 years now. In fact, a colleague of mine, Doug Neal, if you look up consumerization in Wikipedia, Doug Neal, my colleague, is actually credited with using the phrase consumerization in the context of consumer devices impacting employees and business, basically. We've been doing that kind of research. So our research evolves underneath that umbrella over the last decade or so.
Go on.
No, I was just going to say, and obviously, as part of that, what I do is I conduct research with our customers, and the idea is that we go to customers to learn from them about the impact of consumer technologies on established businesses to see what that kind of impact could be. And that's what I do, really.
Okay, cool. Hey, Ed. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm on a bus, so I'll mute and let.
That's okay. Just give us a quick intro, who you are.
So much like with this meeting, I'm the disruptor. So my job is to look for interesting new technologies and work out how our clients can apply them. So that is my role. But it also seems to involve disrupting a lot of meetings, actually disrupting a lot of meetings in this way. I've never disrupted a meeting from a bus before, though.
No. Usually. That's a really important thing that I think you're saying there. One of the things that we're finding here is that I'm up here in Yorkshire. Lewis, you're down in Cardiff, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Ed, you're on a bus in London, is that right? Yeah, okay. And, we're having a conversation about VR and disruption. One of the things that that you were talking about there a little bit earlier, Lewis, was with regards to how this stuff is streaming. What's stopping a company like Periscope creating a VR app on top of their current app that will stream out to somebody using Google Glass, or sorry, Google Cardboard, slide their phone in, and we can have a quick conversation? You're sending that video with Periscope VR app, and I'm watching it with Google Cardboard. I mean, what's stopping something like that happening on the next release of their smartphone, something like that?
Well, the main problem is and again, you have to have it's bandwidth to transmit, but more importantly from that, it's the camera technology that you're using for Periscope. So Periscope is designed as a instant broadcast from that kind of camera on a smartphone.
Okay, surely the next generation of smartphones, they're all going to be aware that people are looking for VR cameras, aren't they? They're going to maybe combine that backwards and forwards. At the moment, on our phone, we've got a camera that faces forward and a camera that faces backwards. But on that gadget there, they've turned that actually into a 360.
Yeah, and you
VR
look at Nokia's first new product in the last sort of 8 years. The first thing they brought to market is a 360-degree cameras. But if you look at the size of the cameras at the moment, you've got to look, it's again miniaturization. If you think about the meme, you've seen the meme on Facebook or the internet about, what we used to take to work in the 1980s, and you'd have, a DSLR camera and a dictaphone and a PC and a notebook and a measuring tape and a ruler. And then the joke was, well, now that's all been replaced by an iPhone.
Yeah.
What's happening here? We're on the next cycle again now. So there's another bow wave of change coming along, where there's all this new functionality appearing. But again, it's appearing in standalone products again. So things like the Ricoh Theta 360-degree camera, or you want to look at light field cameras, like this is an Ilum camera from Lightro, basically, which is one of the world's only light field cameras. So it takes pictures, you can refocus after you've taken an image, but you can use them to create content. But the problem with all of these cameras, there's new ones like we've got one on order from a company called Gyroptic. Google have got their Jump, the GoPro with the multi-rig GoPros. It's the size. There isn't the ability to capture and stitch 360-degree video available in a form factor that's small enough that it could be used mass market with Periscope. Ultimately, you could probably see that's probably where these things might evolve into, but we're way away from that kind of capability. It's going to be very niche at the moment around devices at the moment for a little.
What are your thoughts on this, Ed? Where are you working on at the moment? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the exciting thing about it. Can you hear me? Okay. By the way, I've put on some headphones. Yeah,
that's good.
The exciting thing about this is that the first step towards this will be live streaming VR from cameras like the ones that Lewis has mentioned, and I think that is relatively close. I think that YouTube say it's not on their roadmap, but they say publicly that it's not on their roadmap. But I think it probably someone like YouTube or Periscope, it's something that they will add in the same way that YouTube have added very recently the functionality for streaming uploaded content to a cardboard. That the fact that they've added that recently is kind of shows the direction it's going in, because 2 months ago that wasn't possible. It wasn't possible that wasn't possible on YouTube, and it wasn't possible. But now, actually, the time it takes to go from nothing to being able to send someone your VR content, that has gone down massively. But because before it was, you had to create a custom app, you had to do something, or you actually had to be there with the person in the Oculus Rift, and now suddenly, with YouTube doing that time's gone down even more. As Lewis says, I think the time that you'd go as far as being able to, where people would have these kind of cameras in their pockets, I think that's a way off. I think the first thing is to get people consuming this content, and then I think the next stage will be about people creating that content. But it's in terms of the way that these kind of cycles have gone, I think that the time it went from cameras, when cameras were something that only professionals would use, and they were massive kind of setup, the time it took to go from that to everyone having a camera in their pocket was quite long. the cycle now from something being pro to something being in everyone's pocket, that cycle is much, much shorter these days.
Yeah. Okay, that's great, Ed. Thanks so much for that. And Lewis, have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, just going to agree with you. I think the other aspect of it as well is you've got to think about the digital skills that are required to be able to create new content in this new media as well. People we know as humans, we're fairly lazy in terms of, we've everybody's got used to that form factor. We're used to one button, click in, point the camera, click shoot, point at that. It's a different ball game when you're creating any kind of augmentation or any kind of augmented reality or any kind of virtual reality or 360 imagery, that kind of thing. It's a whole new methodology that's required to get your head around to create the content. The exciting thing I think about at the moment is that in the last sort of 6 to 8 months, you're starting to see consumer grade products like a 180 quid camera you can buy off Amazon and software that you can get on your PC that is no more really complicated in using PowerPoint. So if you're adept at using PowerPoint, you can actually learn pretty quickly as a human. You can create content and augment the imagery and the capture that you get from this kind of stuff to create your own value, to push out there into tech stars, into little stars, into YouTube video, whatever it is. And I think that's part of the ramp up. If you talk about VR or AR for the enterprise, it'll only ever become into the enterprise when it's a skill set that is available to more of the populace within the employee base. Otherwise, it's always going to be under the purview of someone coming into a firm. Can you come in and record us and make us a VR set of content? Yes, we can. It's 100 grand. Well, until you can actually give it as a tool set to your staff where they can make a good enough content themselves, it doesn't become a mass market, influencer. And that's probably from a consumerization point of view. You'll see broadcast stuff happening in the consumer space first. You probably get some people in the enterprise now. That gap is switching down. Some of the enterprises are actually quite switched on in terms of doing this stuff as well. But you've got to find those early adopter.
Example of a company that is really switched on.
Sorry?
Give me an example of a couple of companies that are really switched on with this stuff.
So National Grid, who we're working with at the moment. So National Grid, National Grid are working around using cameras like this, and they're also using things like these kind of devices as well. So that's a structure sensor from occipital. So it's about $400, and it turns basically an iPad into a high definition laser scanner. And so LiDAR scanning of sites and stuff is an incredibly expensive function. The point about it is can you augment your workforce with good enough technology that's not going to do away with permanent LiDAR or permanent 3D imagery capture, but can you give normal users the kind of tech and very simple form factor and UIs that's designed for this one bit and thing that the people can actually create the content themselves to generate extra user stuff. So, you start to see that. You start to see it maybe in police forces where they're combining scenes of crime officers when they go to a scene of crime in the future. You can imagine protecting the chain of custody of evidence, right? So to prove, a defense lawyer will come and say there was a big blood pool in the corner of the room and your officers have stood in it and contaminated the evidence. Well, what happens if you went in there and the very first thing the SOCOs did was put 4 eye beacons in the corner of the rooms to map out logistically the actual room so that you can track all the officers who are walking around with their smartphones so you can see their heat patterns. And what happens if they then use cameras like this to take 360-degree images, still shots of the actual overall crime scene that they can then augment with arrows and boxes and points, or they take a full 3D model that you can walk around with that kind of tech.
Okay. I like those user cases. Craig Vallis also agrees. He loves those.
You take that. What you're talking about there, you're talking about maybe $1,000 worth of technology in the hands of people like that, which would massively improve the process of something that's run, and it would digitize a lot of that extra. It's all about augmentation of an enterprise process using consumer tech. But again, it comes down into putting enough of these things into the hands of people where they can become proficient themselves to come up with the use cases. I think if you're going in and telling them how to use the tech, it's the wrong way. You've got to give it to them so they can explore and learn how to do it themselves.
Okay, Ed, have you got any examples of clients that are using this kind of tech at the moment that you're involved with or you can tell us about?
Yeah, we do have. We do have some clients who are using it, and some quite surprising clients. I think. I think it's not always the ones that you would expect, and I think that the key thing, as Lewis says, has been kind of getting the technology in front of them and showing it to them, and kind of letting them know and letting them know kind of what's possible. I mean, very much the way that we work is about creating a minimum viable product, and starting with what's the smallest thing that we can do in order to kind of de-risk this idea in the eyes of your kind of key stakeholders. And so what we've done for companies, like we've got a pub company that we're working with at the moment, and we've created a VR training tool for them. And and we're also exploring training. I mean, Deloitte's own training, we're looking at doing that using VR as well for this current intake of graduates. And that is something that's kind of, it's possible to do that using similar skills. The film studio that we have within Deloitte, we use that to create training at the moment. And to be honest, there's a lot of transferable skills from the kind of film studio guys that can be used for creating VR training. So, yeah, I think the key thing, similar to what Lewis says, is, I mean, I think that our film guys are obviously specialists, but it's widely enough. It's the skills that are widely enough available that we can do it within the business. But I think that the key thing is just getting it into people's hands and showing them that it's possible. And so that's what we're doing by doing the training ourselves. We're kind of putting our money where our mouth is and saying, look, we think that this VR training is something that will be beneficial to people. We think that it's something that will make a difference, and so we're going to try it, and we're going to use it ourselves.
I think the other thing to be really aware of, Duncan, as well, is the fact that we've got to be careful with the words that we use as well. When we say VR at the moment, the entire discussion we've had so far has been around creating live video. Right, virtual reality and video in terms of that kind of concept. That's not there's a spectrum that explains all this kind of stuff. And I really think as well that we're about to go right into a new cycle again of where virtual world platforms are going to come right back around to the enterprise again. So if you think back about 8-9 years back, every major company had an island in Second Life. So Linden Labs was the big thing. Everybody thought social networking was going to be done as an avatar in a virtual world platform, right? Everybody did. Accenture were onboarding people and having HR interviews. IBM had a massive island. All the big...
I had a meeting in Second Life. We had a meeting in Second Life as a test. It was well, I mean, you're going to come to this.
Yeah. But the funny thing about Second Life is Second Life hasn't actually dropped off much in a user base of the thing, but it got kind of sideswiped by 2D social collaboration. So Twitter and Facebook came along, and then social networking became that. It was mobile based. It was social networking. It was all 140 characters, use your thumbs to type. The virtual world platforms have carried on evolving, and the good thing about these kind of devices and VR content means that it's right to come full circle and go back around again. And you're going to get worlds. So there's a guy like Philip Rosedale who created Second Life. He's got a new startup in San Francisco called highfidelity.io. They're starting to do like an open source virtual world platform that you can be able to teleport between virtual worlds. There's a company called 3DICC. You've got a fantastic collaboration platform called Turf. And the interesting thing about this is, from a user point of view, the big problem with Second Life the first time around was, if you wanted to create any content in the editor, it was very difficult. You had to hire a bespoke design agency to come in and build you your world. The difference in this iteration is that you can now capture content using cameras like this and cameras like that, and you can generate the content by literally just scanning objects, and then you can drag and drop it just like you would a PowerPoint file into PowerPoint and Word, and then orientate that object inside the virtual world. And that power to create content at the end user point of view out in the field, but then put it into a virtual world that anybody on the planet in real time as an avatar can walk around and engage with. And then if you associate like Office functionality around that, the traditional way we work on stuff, voice over IP, video, working on Word around the object, then you can fundamentally see a pattern shift in the way that enterprises will work. But it's not going to be just the video and the head-mounted displays. I think there's virtual world platforms are going to come right back around again, I think.
Okay, that's interesting. Ed, it looks as though you're back in your labs there. Is that right?
Yep, I'm back in the office. I was away giving blood. That's my.
All right,
that
well
was
done.
Me giving blood. So that was why I was away. Thanks for the fields for that.
There's a question come in here, guys. It says, how does crowdsourced 3D There's a bit of a typo there, though, but something about Obama's first swearing-in ceremony, many angles of the same scene stitched into one 3D picture. That sounds as though it's actually pretty cool. Have you heard of that stuff before?
Yeah, that's a gigapixel image. That particular one was a gigapixel image, which the company that makes a lot of the companies that are doing kind of VR stuff are also doing some stuff around gigapixel stuff as well.
Microsoft Labs have got some cool functions that do the similar kind of thing as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, I've been told to try and keep my blabs down to about half an hour, and we're just coming up to that now. We've got one last question in from John. As John has engaged with me a lot, let's try and get this in. Virtual worlds in the enterprise never took off the first time around. Most people just don't connect with avatars. Why would they work this time around? So let's do a couple of minutes on you with that one, Lewis, and then let's switch to you on that one, Ed.
I think the reason why it worked this time around is the same reason that we've struggled. This kind of exactly what we're doing here now. If we were in the enterprise and we were doing any kind of video call or collaboration, this kind of stuff, and you went 5 years back, you'd have struggled inside the enterprise. The difference is that the traditional, we've got a model inside the LEF we call double deep employees, which means you've got a core functional expertise, you're a great geologist, and you're good at IT. The issue is that 10 years ago, the IT part was the big problem because people would phone the help desk up and say, my cup holder's broken on my desktop when they meant the CD tray. The general level of IT skills inside of enterprises on the majority has improved so much, not because enterprise IT has done anything good to train their staff. It's because of consumer devices. We are a lot more adept at doing complex function this time around. And you look at the changing demographic of the workforce, people who've grown up with Xbox, PlayStations, they are a lot more au fait now with the concept of avatars, putting yourself into a digital person inside a world in terms of doing things. And I've seen it now physically when we are working on this inside enterprises, where if I'd have tried to do this with businesses because I have been doing this for a decade with the same product, where people wouldn't be able to orientate themselves, they wouldn't be able to work around, they couldn't emote with the character on the screen. That's still a problem with people, but the percentage of where that's a problem with the people has now shrunk. People are now really used to using gamepads, whether it's using their thumbs. We're a thumb generation. People now understand how to orientate and do them things. Now, the trick is, if you have a system that you can orientate around and you can combine it with something they recognize, like Word, like PowerPoint, like Excel, and then a business this is the trick thing. You just put a system in place. Let's have a virtual world. Great, of course it's never going to work. You have a business process that's improved end-to-end through the use of a virtual world platform. You make it real they understand their place in the world inside the process. Then I think you've got a chance of it working.
That sounds like a Salesforce thing to me. What do you think, Ed? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that the virtual worlds definitely were before their time. I think that VR and virtual worlds mixed together really, really well. And I mean, there's already some kind of massively multiplayer experiences, like Rift Max is an experience that allows you to go to the cinema together and kind of watch the cinema but using the Rift. I think that it'll be interesting to see. I think that the fact that Facebook have bought Oculus Rift means that the focus is Zuckerberg's focus is undoubtedly on creating a very social platform, and so there's no doubt that this isn't going to be about solo experiences. This is definitely going to be something that's collaborative. I think Lewis's point is exactly right. I mean, something has to be good enough before it will be kind of acceptable within the enterprise. And sometimes that point where something becomes good enough it's quite a subtle change that tips something over from being not working to working. Because I mean, there were touchscreen phones before the iPhone, but and there were tablets before the iPad, but it just tipped it over into good enough, and it was something that people could use. I think, it would be interesting to see how it goes in terms of whether it adds enough value to meetings. But I certainly think it's got a lot more chance than previously, because for the things that, Lewis said, but graphical fidelity is higher. You can have relatively high quality avatars now, which definitely helps. If you've used the Leap Motion and you've had your hands, which you saw, Duncan, when you were here, and you've had your hands in VR, that gives you that sense of immersion to a much greater degree. and I think people, people kind of respond well to it. I've definitely had people who've been interested in the idea of VR meetings, but more have been interested in VR training. So I think once that, and I think VR meetings as well, I think, whereas VR training, I think, can work before consumer VR becomes massively popularized, I think that VR meetings will be one of those things where people will have to be very used to it, perhaps in a consumer setting, before they're comfortable with doing it.
Okay,
but
that's great.
Be interesting to see.
So one final word from you on that, Lewis?
Well, I just see that Craig Vallis is on the call here, with our friend from Solfi. And if you think you've got a problem about digital identity and digital trust when you're just trying to hand log-ons for 2D interfaces, you've got to start to think about yourself. How are you going to control yourself when you're an avatar that can basically jump between virtual world platforms, or you might be jumping into multiple apps in VR as well? There's a whole... I think we're right on the cusp of a societal change around this kind of technology, where it will be ubiquitous. I don't think it's going to fail this time around. And when you think about VR, don't think it's something new. It's been around since the early 1900s in literature, but you come through to Morton Hellig back in the 60s, the Sensorama, Ivan Sutherland with the Sword of Damocles. You look at these things up on YouTube, and these are big mechanical VR HMD headsets. I think this time around, it's time now. I think the technology is miniaturized, consumerized enough where it will become mass market, and it's a whole new ball game of digital skills for people to learn, because you're going to have to navigate yourself inside the world.
But I guess one of the things that we can't sideline here is the acquisition of Minecraft by Microsoft, which is already VR world, and they're just really waiting for the technology. But
it's the other thing.
Before we get into that, though, before we get into that, we have pretty much come to the half-hour limit. I know that you guys are both going to be at the IoT dinner. Is that right? On the 25th of August in Farringdon? I know that you are, Ed, because if you aren't, it's not going to happen. Lewis, you're coming out.
It's going to happen. It's going to be here. We're going to have
Lewis,
this sheet.
Gonna be there? Yeah. Oh, no. Show us a little bit, Ed. Show us where it's going to be. Oh.
Well, that's a sheet. We're going to have that sheet. So, yeah, this is where it's going to be. I'll just run you through the office a little bit. Just running through the office. Yeah, so here. It's going to be through this glass here. And actually, it's going to be behind that garage door, which is over there, which says Dream on it, which is... can you see the Dream door? Wait, there it is.
Yeah, I can see the Dream door. We're going to see some of that tech as well. We're going to be able to play with some of that technology.
Yeah, you are indeed. Yeah, so we've got actually... look, this is actually my new SLA printer. Just here. Wait, it's the iBox. The iBox printer, and actually that's the first print on the printer, but you can't really see it. Anyway, but there's the 3D printers.
Is that a food printer by any chance?
No. SLA, stereolithography. So it uses a photopolymer and UV light in order to solidify the prints. I can probably just get it.
It's not a kind of pasta or anything like that.
But yeah.
Okay, but
actually, it looks like it's come out a bit weird, but that's that you can.
That looks pretty good. Can you just turn it to an angle so that we can see it?
What's the? It's like it's a little gear, but there seems to be a slight problem with it.
So we're going to have a look at all of that tech.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And we've also got, as I said at the beginning, we've got Christopher Herskova, Michelin star chef, coming along to cook for us. And I'm hoping that we're going to get a 3D printer, a food printer along as well. But if anybody does want to have tickets, come along to that, meet Lewis, meet Ed, meet everybody else, do let me know. London, 25th of August. Okay, so just give me your last word. I've got one last question for you guys, okay? This is the final question before we go.
Yeah.
What generation of iPhone do you think will incorporate a VR camera?
Well, I don't have an iPhone, so
okay.
I think there'll be an add-on. So you'll be able to plug in the same way that you can plug a structure sensor into your iPhone, and you can plug in things like where is it? This is an FLIR1, which is an infrared camera which plugs onto the iPhone. Same way you can plug that in. I reckon you'll be able to plug in a VR camera. Probably iPhone 7 or 8. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. What about you, Lewis?
No, yeah, I agree. I think it'll go down the peripheral route first. Basically, I think that there's too many challenges to try and get the function of full camera stuff embedded in the case, because we are again obsessed with thinness and processor, and we're reaching the limits of the tech at the moment where we are. But it'll come around. It'll just take a while.
All right, guys, brilliant. Thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward so much to seeing you on the 25th.
Yep.
Take care, guys.
Cool. See you.
See you later, guys.
Okay. So thanks for joining me there. I appreciate that. It's only my third blab. As I said, we do have the dinner on the 25th. If anybody who is not coming along would like to come along, just get into contact with me. I'll send you through the link. It's in Farringdon, which is in London.